This short video material picks up on a conversation started in the previous material on writing an abstract as a story. If you haven't watched that, you can go back and watch it later, or you can pause now, watch that one first and come back here. That's up to you. Essentially, this material looks at writing a formal abstract. So let's start by thinking, what is an abstract? Thomson and Barbara Kamler call an abstract a tiny text, which is a really helpful way of thinking about what an abstract is or what an abstract does in terms of writing and purpose. So essentially, the abstract is the first thing that people access about our work when they look it up online, or when they look at a conference booklet to decide which papers they want to spend time at. It needs to therefore contain all of the pertinent information about the paper that we're writing or presenting, or the thesis that we're writing, in a short, concise, clear text. Right? The average abstract for a paper is around about 150 words, can go up to about 300 words. The average thesis abstract at master's and doctoral level is maybe about 300 to 400, sometimes 500 words, depending on the university and depending sometimes also on the field. So it's not a very long piece of writing compared to the 6 or 7 or 8,000 words you might be writing in a paper, or the 40 or 50 or 80,000 words you might be writing in a thesis. Because it is the first thing that readers access about our paper, and because it's the thing that's going to help them to decide whether or not they want to download and read the full paper, or download and read the full thesis, or come to our conference presentation, we need to make sure that it is written for the readers or for the potential audience at the conference. This means that it needs to be clear, it needs to be accessible, it needs to communicate our paper or our thesis in really clear, unambiguous terms. And it needs to contain, and this is encapsulated in the idea of a tiny text, all the key points. And usually in a thesis or a paper, this is: why is the research being done? What is the argument of the paper or the thesis? What basically was the research design or methodology, and what are the findings, and why does this matter? Okay, so that's what Thomson and Kamler call, basically, and we're going to look at this more in the next slide, the 4 steps. We locate our research in the field, we focus in on what it is that we're going to be talking about or writing about, we report on what was done or what was found, and we argue for its significance or its impact or its importance to the field. Because abstracts also are written for readers who may be coming into the database looking for research from a range of different perspectives or for a range of different purposes, we want to make sure that we use references very sparingly, if we use them at all. We don't want to have a lot of jargon or technical terms in our abstract, because we don't necessarily know who's going to be reading and accessing that abstract, or why they might want to read our paper or listen to our paper. And we definitely don't want to be too wordy, which means we don't want lots of long, complex sentences. We want to be clear and concise. We want short, sharp sentences that very clearly communicate our ideas to our readers. So if you've watched the story video, what you can do now is take the story that you wrote and develop it or revise it into a more formal abstract. If you haven't watched the story video and you haven't done that exercise, you can just simply engage in this exercise. So locate really asks, what conversation are you engaging with or joining? What prior research is your paper connecting with? What's the angle here? So it's a couple of sentences really just situating your work within the field and giving your reader a little taste of the reasons why you've done the research or the background to the research. Then you move on to focusing. What is the particular problem or question or issue that your paper or your thesis is going to explore? So this is the step of focusing in, zooming in on that one contribution that you're going to try to make. Summarize your major findings. If it's pertinent, outline the research approach taken, your sample, your method of analysis. You can work out what is pertinent to share with your readers in terms of your own tiny text. And this is the step called reporting. What did you do? How did you go about doing the research? On what basis are you making your claims? And then finally, come back to the argument, right? Return to your angle. What is your contribution? What will your analysis show? What do you hope to say to your field? What impact do you hope that your research will have? And that's the part where you argue. for the significance or the contribution or the value of your research. So let's quickly look at a couple of examples, and you can pause the video here to read these more closely. This example, and the references on the slide after this, is a very brief abstract. It starts off with what the focus is, right? So what I want you to do with these abstracts and with other abstracts you're reading is look for these 4 steps. Locate, focus, report, argue. They don't always come in that order, but ideally they should be somewhere in the abstract so that you have a clear idea of what part of the field this paper is emerging from, what kind of contribution this paper is going to be making, how it's going to be doing that, and what is the argument that this paper is going to be making. And you'll notice quite quickly that different fields do this in very different ways, but that those steps are almost always there. This is the reference for that paper. And this is the second example that you can pause and look through, which comes from the applied sciences. And you can see this is a longer abstract and a more detailed abstract. But those 4 steps are also more or less present. So one of the things to learn from this exercise is that you need to become a more confident meta-reader of the text that you're reading. Look for the structures that the writers are employing to get their points across to you as the reader. How are they writing their abstracts? What abstracts appeal to you? What abstracts don't appeal to you? Why? Look for these 4 steps and then look at ways that you can incorporate these into your own writing.